It might come as a surprise to you that I don't use a DSLR for my photography, nor do I use a mirrorless DSLR. In fact, right now the only instrument that I have is my iPhone. And I have, over the years of shooting iPhonography, if you will, I have looked at ways that may be enhancing the outcome, the clarity, the bokeh, the focal lengths, that kind of thing. And about this time last year, I came across ShiftCam and thought I would try it out to see if it would do just that, if it would make my imaging any better. First off, you might be wondering why the iPhone to begin with. And there's a couple of good reasons for that. One is the glass is pretty good in it. And two, it's a 48 megapixel camera, at least the one I'm using with the iPhone 14. That buys me more pixels, it gives me more pixels than what I was using in the past as far as my DSLR was concerned, or my mirrorless DSLR. Now I miss that one. I miss my XM1 and have been tempted to maybe go and pick up another body just so I can get a long lens and shoot the kind of telephoto stuff that my eye is looking for. But outside of that, I really don't have a need to go beyond what the iPhone is offering. And as I've been shooting the ShiftCam lenses over the past year, I'm realizing that I could probably live without them just fine. So what I want to do here is just a very quick review of their product and what they're putting out there. They have a whole product line that you can buy in a kit, or you can buy one lens at a time, which is kind of what I did because I just wanted to see what I was doing before I really got financially committed, if you will, to this idea of adding glass to glass. And really that's what we're doing. I can't shortchange the engineering that went into the iPhone to begin with to create the clearest, sharpest, largest resolution photograph capable. Now, my phone, the iPhone 14, is now 3 generations out of whack. But the best camera is the one you have, and this is the one that I've had over tens of thousands of miles of adventuring, not on my motorcycle as well as off-road. So the iPhone 14, the one that I'm using and that I shoot with, has basically 4 focal lengths. What it boils down to is a 14 millimeter super wide angle lens, and then it goes to a 24 millimeter, and then that doubles to a 48 millimeter, and then it has a 77 millimeter lens. Now, my phone's gotten a little wonky with its telephoto lens. Sometimes it'll pull focus and sometimes it won't. And so I found it not to be reliable for the kind of shooting that I want to be doing. And that's why I'm kind of wishing I had that Fujifilm XM1 back. But that said, ShiftCam came up with a number of devices to make not just the outcome of shooting the iPhone better, but also to make the experience of shooting with it better, which they succeeded at better than the outcome. They have a pro grip that's made to hold the phone that allows me to go through and keep the phone charged off of its internal battery. I can also, there's a shutter release on it if it's nicely in my hand. I can rotate the film plane to go from horizontal to vertical. And it works okay without the case, without ShiftCam case that comes with the kit. But if you don't have the case, then you have to find an alternate way to mount the lenses on there. The ShiftCam lenses that I have, there are basically 3 of them. So I have their wide angle lens, which is a 16 millimeter lens, and it's nice ground glass. All their material feels really good. It feels stout. The way it's built and comes together feels like it's a rather high-end kind of product that you're working with, especially with the gold trim, that kind of thing on it. And then I have their 60 millimeter telephoto. It gets me out there. It does the job for what I want it to do, but there's some issues with that, and I'll get to here in just a minute. And then the last lens that I have of theirs is their 75 millimeter macro. And this is probably my favorite lens out of them all because it's the one that really improves the output of the camera, improves what I'm able to do photographically in my compositions. And let me stick with that for a minute. The macro lens on the iPhone really is just the ultra wide angle lens very close up. And that being the case, it gets me into some brilliant detail in close-up shots, but it doesn't produce the kind of bokeh. And what I mean by that is, what does the background of the subject look like, okay? And you'll see in these images here as I'm A/Bing through those, as I'm switching from image to image so you can see, the image with the iPhone's, quote, macro, their faux macro, has a lot of detail in the background, where the image is pulled up with this macro, with the ShiftCam macro, are more appropriate as far as producing that kind of bokeh is concerned. Now, that being said, I can take the image that's created by the macro within the iPhone, and I can bring it through Lightroom, and I can go through and turn that background a little bit more onto the blur side of things. If I'm out there shooting and I see a shot, typically I'm not going to stop, reach into my bag, pull out this, screw it onto my camera, and go through and shoot. If I'm going out specifically for macro, I'll already have it all set up and ready to go. But there's some issues with that are kind of problematic in doing so. The way these are built is nice. Like I was referring to before, they have a knurled edge on the, there's a filter ring that comes off, or there's a ring that comes off and a filter ring that goes on top of that makes it easier to take off and on. And I like about that, and I really like the filters for what it is that I'm doing, because they offer me a little bit more control as far as depth of field is concerned and polarization. I have two of them. One is a graduated neutral density filter that gives me 5 different stops of neutral density to shoot through, and what that does is it allows me to go through and structure my depth of field the way I want it if I'm not using Lightroom. The circular polarizer just goes through and helps me pull reflections off of water or metallic or glass surfaces, and helps me pull some detail out of those surfaces if that's what I'm doing. I like that a lot. In fact, I use those more than I use the ground glass that ShiftCam has put out there. They also make their sling. I bought this because I like having everything with me, and I like the fact that it's out of the way when I'm using it. The problem is its accessibility is evidence that whoever designed it never used it. Either that, or I'm just a bumbling, fumbling idiot, because I struggle. Every time I try to get a lens out of the pouches that are built into this, over a year's time, you'd think that's kind of a muscle memory thing that I'd have down. I don't. I'm just not all that wild about it, especially for the money paid for something like that. The lenses themselves come in these pouches, these little clamshell pouches, which are very protective of the items as they're in there, and each have a little carabiner that's attached to them that also goes through and identifies what's inside the pouch. So I think that's a great idea. Again, the issue, though, in dealing with this is just kind of the fumbling around with it and having it hang on like a dongle onto the bag. Just not all that great. For the most part, I'm just shooting with my iPhone. And I am perfectly happy in doing that, because it's these kinds of images that I'm able to go through and create with that, and then bring back and use Lightroom's tools to go through, just like I would do dodging in a darkroom, to go through and enhance the photography that I did. I shoot for detail in shadow and in highlights. I know that if I shoot something that's on the dark side, that I can resurrect some detail within that stuff, or if I shoot something that's blown out, not quite so easy to resurrect detail in that, but I'm still able to go through and do so. And I can do that especially if I'm working with the neutral density lens, the neutral density filter on the front of the iPhone. So the hits with this are the grip itself, the Pro Grip. The case has not fared well. It loses its ability to maintain a perfectly perpendicular plane to the lens of the iPhone. And what I mean by that is, if I'm attaching this to the holder that's on there, the holder itself is gone a little ski-wompy, if you will. It's not perfectly parallel to the film plane of the camera. And that being the case, I can look through some images and find that there's some soft parts of it about halfway through the image, which go through and indicate to me that it's not giving me what I need. And that's the Achilles heel to this whole thing, is how it mounts to the camera. And honestly, I'm just not that interested to go through and find a better mount to use the glass that I have. All right. Well, if you like what you see, first off, thanks for watching my YouTube channel on on filmplanepeaks.com. And if you like this, if this has been helpful to you, give me a like if you would, and please subscribe too, because there's more to come.